In this episode, you will see the hardest battle of my WW3 life. The epic stand of the last defender of Europe against a coordinated 7-nation onslaught hitting from all directions. And I had nothing but tanks and my drone gremlins in the sky. Hope you will ready to watch me suffer. Let's see how it all started. On day 27, two key units for me finished their upgrades. Motorized infantry level 5 and elite submarines level 2. I know it's hard to believe, but with those I'd be ready to repel invasions on every front, or at least on half the fronts. Thanks to my radars, I spotted troops embarking into transports from Tunisia in time. That was probably Brazil preparing to invade. Meanwhile, Peru was massing his not-so-friendly minions in Spain. Peru was audacious enough to fly straight at the airfield near my homeland cities. Don't underestimate enemy stupidity. Sometimes they redeploy right over your territory, and you can learn their composition. This happens in almost every campaign of mine. The trick is to leave them that opportunity. I dropped my scout into Spain, and standing in a mountain province that boosted my sight radius, I started receiving recon from there. The enemy was obviously preparing to strike me, and I was preparing to stop him. That's also why my tanks were moving toward Greece, because I figured that would be one of the likely invasion axes. Wasting no time, I decided to finish the war with Ukraine. Europe was going to heat up soon, and I needed to close old conflicts so that I could start new ones without losing much morale. So my drone operators first scouted, then struck the remaining city. Using the airfield on an Italian island, I slipped into Tunisia and began reconnaissance. Brazil had a lot of weak tank meat divisions made of low-level units. But one important detail, I had no air forces to which those tanks would be vulnerable. All that massive HP, I'd have to grind down on land. That turns a simple task into hyper-complexity. Peru kept concentrating forces. I found the perfect spot to reveal his recon divisions while staying invisible to them. The buildup on the Baltic island continued to grow. It wasn't just Peru now. Canada was there too, telling me his coalition wanted to be friends and had absolutely no plans to attack. Sounded more believable with every passing hour. Well, here comes the coordinated attack they definitely weren't planning. Brazil launched landings on every one of my Mediterranean islands. I wasn't about to panic. Stay calm and squeeze the most out of the forces you've got. I'd already sent sabotage drones to harass naval targets. It's a drop in the ocean, but in this Mediterranean, every drop sinks ships and counts like a whole destroyed unit. The division near Budapest would hold Serbia. I'd already struck enemy troops while they were in the water using an elite loitering munition, but I'd only killed one unit so far. Many more were still en route. My Berlin reserve had recovered its health. I left it at base for now, just in case the northern assault got serious. But if needed, I can sprint it to any flank. So what was Peru cooking on his island? Overall, not much. My plan was simple: blow the airfield to deny one invasion axis. Subs would catch the fleeing ones and AA would take down the planes. On the Spanish front, I had a stack of 8 infantry and 2 mobile anti-air. I knew it wasn't much. Ideally, I'd win with a surprise strike. But if that failed, I at least aimed to delay him long enough to deal with Brazil. Speaking of him, he'd nearly captured my island, but my gremlins were already swarming him like a hornet hive. Still, the island wouldn't save him. I was glad he committed a huge division to such a trivial objective. This bought me an extra time. I built a pontoon for my radar, and amid the whine of bullets, slipped to another island. Using a free recon drone, I also scouted the troublemaker who was bombing Marseille. Turns out it was a destroyer and another meat division that aimed to take me. The Spanish front started moving too. The enemy coordination was enviable. On that flank, I was stronger, yet he had aircraft that could reach me from the Moroccan airfield. So the plan was simple: smash everyone fast, then skulk back to France. Off the Italian coast, I did everything I could with my sabotage drones. I tried to launch them before the enemy began his landings, or else the target would already be unavailable for attack. The airfield near Germany was destroyed, and the AA division that tried to flee was intercepted by my submarines. I got lucky to land the first strike and kill the enemy while he wasn't ready. Now clearing the enclave was a matter of technique, and my few ships handled it. Of course it wasn't over. New invaders were sailing at me from a Danish island. For now, I sent submarines to gauge how dangerous the target was. On the Spanish flank, I used ELMs to chew up the enemy while keeping my own HP intact. Motorized infantry can launch them from level 4, and I intended to exploit that. So I wasn't as helpless as I might have looked. Here I did fine because the enemy simply attacked by walking forward. no cleverness required. So no problems for me. At least now. On the Italian front, the drones finally started hitting their marks. Yes, they took off 10-12 HP per hit. That's not much, but not bad either. I was lucky to strike the enemy while he was still in the water. You might think the damage is negligible, but it's only the beginning. I'll need hundreds of strikes, and my main limiting factors are cash and reload time. Besides sabotage gremlins, I also had explosive ones, whose power the cheeky Brazilian was about to feel. Right now, I was spamming him with my mosquito swarm. On top of that, I'd forgotten to destroy the Rome airfield before the enemy captured it. And now Brazilian aircraft had landed there. That was bad, and I had to waste sabotage drones to take the airfield down. My special forces were sitting right on the city's edge, revealing incoming troops so I could prioritize who to hit first. I kept spamming drones like my life depended on it, because it basically did. I needed to buy time until the tank divisions from central Germany arrived. Think my resistance was ineffective? Think again, look at what my sabotage drones did to the AA division. It lost nearly half its health points. Since it included mobile anti-air, it was my top priority. If I left it alive, my B raids for Brazilian honey would stop being effective. My radar on Majorca wasn't idle either. An EOL was launched at a Peruvian tank division. The only problem now was my unit level, which I was already upgrading. Canada had started a landing in the United Kingdom, but luckily I spotted it early and hit him with a submarine. I had few units, but they were spread across the fronts and so far handled the invasion efficiently. By the way, you can now see the ELN results near Majorca. I destroyed 1 tank and 1 infantry in the water. Let's go back to Brazil. I had already chewed up his AA division pretty well, and now only a shadow of its former glory remained. My 9 drone operators sat uncomfortably close to his tank division. Since he had no radars and couldn't reach me with air forces, I was free to play as boldly as I wanted. My fun, however, was about to end. On the former Italian island, he rushed the construction of an airbase with gold. I'll say it straight away, he wasn't a golder, just a regular grinder who earned gold with match wins. So I wasn't going to whine. I simply pulled back deeper into my territory to regroup. My drone operators had completed their mission and needed time to recharge. Mexico had already begun to disembark at Marseille, where I had sent my fearless 5-unit division. Meanwhile, in Spain, I was almost finished with the invaders. If it weren't for that airfield, I would have been satisfied with how the defensive operation was going. For now, it went very well, and I couldn't complain. I didn't have strong anti-air myself, but fortunately, enemies didn't have a powerful air stack either. To repel the landing in Serbia, I sent a radar. It can also launch ELM, and right now, that's all I had. The division had 125 health, and after my drone strike, it was down to 47. Not bad at all for a radar, agree? I sent 3 tanks to help the radar. I hope those forces will be enough to neutralize the enemy and let me forget about that front. Brazil started sending his air minions separately, 1 unit at a time. Luckily, my decoy drones did their job, and instead of attacking me, he attacked them. I also sent 4 of my mobile anti-air to try to catch them. In Marseille, Peru, and Mexico continued their shore landings. I think you already know what comes next. I plan to deploy my Wunderwaffe. The theme of this video is drone domination, and I intended to spam them non-stop for the next few days. The first drone struck and destroyed 3 units. The enemy bit the bait and sent a fighter to neutralize me. Of course, I had prepared for that, so my division from Spain had already returned to France and was ready to help. In Spain, I had nearly finished wiping out the small enemy forces, and if needed, I could abandon that whole region because it was far away. But France, I could not leave. My homeland cities are right after France. Meanwhile, in Italy, Brazil was killing my drones, and eventually walked into my AA zone and got destroyed. It was obvious he wasn't the most skilled player. My radar was chilling in isolation on the island. I was praying it wouldn't get destroyed and that it would live as long as possible. Radar gave me crucial intel on where enemy forces were and where they were heading. The moment we were all waiting for was approaching. My tank commander had nearly arrived in Italy from Berlin and would soon be ready to enter close combat with the Brazilian. I had already eliminated Brazil's air stack, so the drone operators began spamming drones as hard as they could. Money had become my #1 problem. My income didn't cover drone expenses. That's why I had to sell resources on the market. I was also continuously building deployable gears for ELM to continue my drone terror. I used recon drones as bait, explosive drones against ground forces, and sabotage drones against ships and transport convoys. By the way, another naval signature had started moving from the east of Italy. That was not a good sign. After my activity in Italy, Brazil forgot about Marseille, which I immediately exploited. I launched 2 more drones right when the Peruvian forces were due to disembark. Of course, I had scouted the composition of their divisions and timed everything so I wouldn't get hit by Peruvian anti-air. In short, I managed to destroy 8 units with 2 drones. After that, I ran out of deployable gears, but new ones were on the way. Also, the AA division shot down another plane. That helped clear the skies for the drones. With the airspace safer, I could prepare the next wave of strikes. A striker circled over Venice that couldn't find the ground target to hit. However, he did take a smack from my AA. In truth, he wasn't even trying to hunt ground units. He was trying to deal with my drones. Now you can see my mobilization queue. Besides SAM launchers, I was mobilizing only deployable gears for my drone warfare. I urgently needed them, so I rushed 1 mobilization queue using my gold reserves. My radar had 11 minutes left to recharge before ICBM launching. The cheeky Brazilian division that had been bitten by my bees ran headlong into a true heavy-honored boss, and 7 units were instantly wiped out under the pressure of absolute might. Nothing in this game gives you a feeling of omnipotence quite like tanks. Finally, I received my gears, and immediately launched a drone from my quarantine radar. That strike helped me shave off 3 more units and my radar was suddenly almost safe. Only the last infantryman remained and explosive drones would take care of him. I just needed to get within launch range. Meanwhile in Spain, I caught the last Peruvian enemy on a combat outpost in the defensive position and sent my troops to seize the ground so that if he tried to repeat landing there, he would waste time reclaiming his former holdings. Near Venice, 3 frigates appeared. I started hitting them with sabotage drones because, frankly, I had nothing better in range. I didn't send them all at once, though. I didn't want a Brazilian fighter to intercept every single one. Safer this way for my green goblins. Once the Peruvian division with MAA left the flight path of my drones, I finally managed to send them to rescue my radar with steel balls. At the same time, I launched another batch of sabotage drones to sink the frigates. Now all I needed was time and money. Luckily, he couldn't catch my operators, even though they danced around him almost inside his view radius. Another wave of 9 Peruvian suicide units sailed into Marseille, and of course, I didn't refuse them their self-destruct performance. Honestly, there's no better scenario for me against a numerically superior enemy than shredding their troops mid-disembark with drones. While that unfairly underrated elite unit kept working, I exploited it mercilessly. 2 more strikes let me delete 10 units in Marseille. That was very, very good. Enemy losses increased my chances of survival. By the time my radar in Italy was safely recovered, I swung into a full counterattack and my tank commander marched on Rome for a gladiator match. Fortunately, there would be plenty of beefy opponents, and we were in for some spectacular Colosseum fights. An airfield near the UK showed occasional activity, so I sent my corvettes to smash it. While it was undefended, I took the chance to break out of the enclave on that flank, a flank I didn't want to babysit for long. Back to Marseille. This time I assembled an 8-unit division and sent it into close combat. I can afford to burn a few health points instead of wasting drones to neutralize those opponents. My current headache was ships attacking my ground forces. I needed time to level up ELM and deal with them properly. With no other strike options, I kept nibbling on Brazil's frigates with sabotage drones. And spoiler alert, I managed to destroy them completely over the next few hours. Still, the Mediterranean clearly lacked my submarines. I sent the next sabotage drone wave to a target near Greece, and at the same time met the remnants of a Canadian tank division in Sarajevo. You might think I sent too many troops here, but the signatures in Greece genuinely worried me. I needed to finish Italy fast and focus all attention on the new opponent. In Spain, Peru started hitting me with his level 2 strikers, and I retreated under the protection of my anti-air. Luckily, he wasn't very experienced either, and dove in with a direct attack instead of patrolling. So the moment he made contact with the ground, he triggered AA and got a kick in the rear. Not long ago, Canada landed in Ireland. That island wasn't a core piece of my defensive line, yet I still didn't want to lose it. So I sent a few infantry, a submarine, and a drone operator to shore up the defense. Now for the main course. I know you've been waiting for this from the tank challenge. Of course, I'm talking about melee tank battles. Full power mode is activated, and our first course is a Brazilian division with 145 health. Boom! Enemy evaporated. Who after that would dare say tanks aren't powerful? They're like the old regular at the bar. Not the brightest, sometimes vulnerable, but never letting you down because they're always ready to scrap with anyone. Next up was a smaller 5-unit division. During the attack, 1 unit survived and spoiled my chance at a third one-shot. That happened because we moved from an open province where tanks had an attack bonus into a forested province where they didn't. Also note that I kept spamming sabotage drones at all sea targets as they cycled through cooldown. Without giving me a minute's peace, from the Ukrainian flank, India struck. For now, he invaded only with a large elite division and was harassing me with fighters. Turkey, India's ally, was already redirecting infantry toward Kyiv. Meanwhile, Pakistan was slowly but steadily gathering troops in Greece. There was also an air signature nearby that likely belonged to either Pakistan or Turkey. Since I had spotted an airfield a bit earlier, I immediately began funneling AA there. Besides that, I sent my elite tank division as reinforcement. My radars on the island kept paying off, both as scouts and as launch platforms for ELM. Even though a ship attacked me there, I waited for the perfect moment and as a bonus deleted 3 Mexican infantry. A little later, the enemy minions attempted another landing in Marseille. I found the perfect tile from which a drone could hit both the ground invaders and the Mexican ships. For those ships, I was effectively invisible, since only infantry remained there. You might think the opponent was outright dumb for falling for the same trick so many times. However, I'll disagree. Most likely they hoped that surrounded by 8 countries they could overload me. In such a scenario, it would be extremely hard to repel every attack, and a brazen landing could actually succeed. In the end, I launched 2 more drones and they wiped them all. India began attacking me in Italy. Fortunately, he flew over my AA, giving me an opportunity to strike. As you probably guessed, he was using an airfield owned by another coalition, which meant he could see where my forces were. He had not just a right-of-way, but shared intelligence. The whole map seemed to be united against me, and their coordination was impressive. Their skill, however, left much to be desired. Soon I detected Turkish heavy bombers, whose signature we'd seen earlier. Judging by the infantry he was already moving to my borders, an attack wouldn't be long in coming. That's why, being at war with 5 countries, I decided to open a 6th front and struck Turkey first while I still had the advantage. An enemy is always vulnerable during preparation stage. So even if you're surrounded, surprise everyone with audacity and hit first. No one will expect it, and you will get an advantage. On the Ukrainian front, I had 1 SAM launcher, and watching India's maneuvers, when he flew near his invasion point searching for my units, I placed it exactly where he was likely to show up next, and I got insanely lucky. He not only appeared there, but also left planes on patrol. Overall, the enemies didn't have enough air units to threaten me seriously. For safety's sake, I followed the match news the whole time, especially anything involving strike units like helicopters or strike fighters. I already knew India and Pakistan had lots of air superiority fighters that were safe for me, so I didn't sink many resources into AA. If I had, I wouldn't have had so many tanks, drones, infantry, and submarines. Of course, I was extremely lucky that the enemy played so poorly, and that I managed to predict their moves so well. But I'm not always that smart. In short, India's air stack was slowly destroyed. India stayed online the whole time, and messaged me insults, accusing me of buying troops. It's hard to imagine how much gold you'd need to use a SAM to destroy patrolling planes. But he'd probably know better. By the way, after that, his elite division literally wet its pants and fled back to his homeland. Wasting no time, I began upgrading my SAM launcher to level 2. At the same time, my motorized infantry was being upgraded to level 6, which would grant me attack range. Meanwhile, in Ireland, I was chasing down a Canadian National Guard unit and retaking land so the enemy would have to split his forces and become easier to finish off. Shortly after, I managed to catch that guardsman and destroy him in defense in a province near Dublin. I dragged my drone operators to Kiev and started slowly picking away at the Turkish troops stationed there. India, as I said earlier, ran off to whine in the match news. Back in Marseille, a fresh wave of 4 Mexican units was attempting a landing. Just check out how ELM buffs motorized infantry. I stood on defense and kept hitting the button that almost instantly wipes out enemy stacks. Is that not the absolute power of the strongest elite unit? I sent my recon minion to the airfield in Morocco to scout the composition and, ideally, to dent the enemy air forces. It turned out to be one infantry and a striker. I decided to deal with them the way I love best, with a drone and then mopping up the remnants in close combat. Believe it or not, Peru pulled himself together and stopped making those mistakes. He is probably the strongest among my opponents and he caused a lot of trouble later. This war is far from over. Mexico woke up and sent 8 units to destroy my radar. I had pre-built a pontoon to make my escape. A radar is still a valuable thing and I couldn't just abandon it. I defended it as best I could. My drone managed to delete an incredible 6 units and I escaped successfully. Soon I returned to the island with fresh small forces. I relaxed too much and paid for it. Now Peru was attacking my infantry painfully. At least not with impunity. My AA was giving him a taste of his own medicine. I also captured a slice of Greece, Bulgaria, and arrived in Istanbul. I really hope that destroying the division in Kiev and taking that homeland city will make Turkey think twice about attacking me. Istanbul is Turkey's geographic Achilles heel. Easy to take, hard to retake. For now, I sent drones to scout and might try to cross the strait. In Ireland, I attacked a Canadian tank battalion with my motorized infantry level 6. A naval signature popped up which I already struck with my corvettes. Receiving no return fire, I brazenly sailed closer to check the stack composition. It turned out to be a US carrier group with fighters and helicopters on board. Another headache added to my ledger. If you see a player on the map gaining too many points and edging toward victory, don't be shy. Coordinate with your allies, or better yet with another coalition, and gank him from multiple directions. In our game, there are those who play every match to win. Those who do nothing and just wait for the game to win itself. But most of all, those who suddenly get an extra burst of motivation and will go all out to throw a wrench in the works of anyone on the verge of victory. That's exactly what happened. 7 countries ganged up on me, and I barely escaped with my radar and my dignity.